the interesting thing is that once Bitcoin opened the door, anybody can create a currency. And not only can they create a currency, but using this recipe, they can create a currency that is, from day one, instantaneously, entirely global, unforgeable, quite secure, verifiable, runs on lightweight software on a myriad of devices, and at first has no value, but people might start using it. So then that begs the question, how many currencies will we have? And the answer is a bit like, how many YouTube stars will we have? How many podcasts will we have? Well, I mean, we're all copying the same one idea of, I have a TV channel or I have a show.
Exactly.
Right. So in the end, you could have everybody in the world creating their own currency, just like everybody in the world could create their own podcast. And the vast majority would be crap.
So for the most part, everyone would just use the most popular currency.
There is a particular statistic distribution that arises out of these phenomena called the Pareto distribution, power law, or long tail. We see this with also known as the 80-20 rule. So 20% of the music artists are 80% of the market. 20% of the YouTube channel are 80% of the views. You have a handful, 5 or so, who dominate the market. They have the majority, more than 50% of all of the clicks. But then what you have is a very, very long tail that goes off into infinity of these tiny, tiny little YouTube stars, channels, music artists, books, whatever the category is, that have one reader or one viewer, but there's an infinity of them, right? That's what I predict is going to happen in currencies, and in fact, we are beginning to see that distribution emerge. And it's a natural outcome when you have something that is socially distributed, like money is, and where there will be some affinities, some popular ones, or some ones that are just better. But there's nothing stopping everybody and their uncle from doing one.
What is the incentive for me to create my own currency? Because I get a small percentage of each transaction.
Well, there's all kinds of things, but yes, of course, if you were conniving, what you could do is you create your own currency and then allocate a whole bunch of it to yourself before you gave it to everybody else. That's called a pre-mine in cryptocurrency. And then if anybody else gets interested in and they buy it and trade it and give it some value, the many more units that you have already allocated to yourself acquire value. It's a bit like starting a company and selling shares to it, which, by the way, also violates a whole bunch of US laws if you do it in that way. So there's been a lot of these kinds of pyramid schemey, Ponzi schemey scams that people are doing because it's a very easy way to, if you're good at branding, at marketing, at shilling, at promoting these things, you can go out and persuade them that what you just built is the next Bitcoin. In fact, that's what they all say. And then if anybody pays attention, you can make serious amounts of money. Don't do this. It's both unethical and illegal. But people do anyway. So you should be skeptical. The really interesting thing is that in a way, this is a form of human expression that is as old as time, because the idea that anyone can create money seems surprising when you're used to national money, but it's much less surprising if you walk into a kindergarten with the perspective of a sociologist or an anthropologist and you watch kids turn rubber bands and colored wooden blocks into currency that they use to establish social hierarchy, bonds, affinity, approval, association, and friendship. Social beings use the language of value to establish and reinforce social ties. So, and we see not just humans, in fact, you can teach primates to do this, and they will not only readily adopt money, but they will very, very quickly evolve various uses from it. Not perhaps the best uses. An experiment that was done with primates, teaching them how to exchange tokens for bananas, resulted not only in broad adoption in the entire primate space that was being studied, but very quickly resulted in the invention of armed robbery. Beat the other monkey, take his tokens, you have bananas, and prostitution. Sell tokens for, give tokens for sex. And
that was so funny. I was just talking to somebody actually just told me about this like last weekend. That's amazing that you just brought it up.
Yes, but what this shows is it doesn't show us anything about money other than this. And I think this is a very interesting and important point. Ultimately, money doesn't have value. Money is a language. It is a language that we use to communicate value to each other. And it is therefore an artifact of civilization. It is an artifact of a social species engaging in acts of society and acts of civilization. As we build larger societies, the ways that we express value to each other become complex. You can no longer exchange favors or here's 5 chickens, give me a haircut. I appreciate that you gave me some eggs last week, so why don't I help you fix your fence? Keeping track of all of the relationships, debts, numbers, and opportunities, and the exchange rates of different types of favors becomes cumbersome. What humans do is they abstract this in linguistic terms by inventing money. And we invent tokens that can be used to express that value. The tokens themselves don't have any value. They just have to have certain characteristics. They have to be rare. If you can find them everywhere around you, then you get inflation very quickly. They have to be unforgeable, because otherwise people will just start creating them to increase their social status. They have to be easily transportable. In most cases, although there are some interesting exceptions in history of the giant ray stones, as they're known. And they have to be instantly recognizable and with a universal unit of measure. Now, if you think about all of these characteristics, we've done this with physical things, and these physical things always have some disadvantages. And some of the trade-offs we have to make involve getting a government in the game so they can produce them in a way that is scarce and unforgeable and trusted by everyone. But once you realize that as long as it has those characteristics, it can work as money, then you realize that software can do this very effectively. And that's basically what Bitcoin is. It's the recognition that money is language, a language we use to express value, and languages encoded digitally become communication media on the internet. And with software, we can manage the fundamental properties that ensure that this is good money rather than kind of useless money. We make sure that you can't just make more of it at a whim, that you can easily recognize it, that you can't forge it, that you can verify that it's real, that you can transport it easily, and that it keeps its value over time, that you can divide it into smaller bits if you only need a bit of it, but also bunch it together into bigger bits. All of these characteristics have been engineered into a software system. And turns out, because we can tweak these parameters in software, we can make money that is better than any type of money that has ever existed. And that's where things get interesting, because add to that it is open and available for anyone to use without authorization, and the world changes.